Welcome to Adventure Thinking, an intimate series of live video podcasts that explores the mindset born from challenge, adversity, and living a life of no regrets. I'm Jonesy, your host, and for the past 20 years, I have been lucky to have embarked on some crazy expeditions.
And I'm Lauren, your other host, and I haven't.
And returned transformed, with some pretty epic tales to share.
I'm more of an accidental adventurer.
You just start to question why you're doing it.
Each week, I'll be bringing adventure stories
We'll be bringing
and mindsets down from the proverbial mountaintop as we dive into the hearts and minds of some of the world's greatest adventurers. These are people that have achieved truly phenomenal undertakings against all odds and have returned better for it. So, do you want to live more adventurously? This is Adventure Thinking.
All right, Lauren.
Hello.
How you doing, everybody? How you doing, Lauren?
We need to change that video. That was supposed to be a placeholder,
that was
and
a
now it's like 2 months old.
That's the thing about just, I don't know,
We're always
COVID.
saying-
You
we're
get,
always
you get a
saying
little
let's
lazy
look
with some things. So
We'll do it when we have a minute.
I will
and we
change that video. But how's the past week been for us, Lauren? Or for you, at least?
Look, I hate to complain because
Well, then don't.
I feel like Victoria has it way worse. But you know, it's a challenging time. I'm not gonna lie. Like it's things. It feels like there's few things in your control, and you have to focus on the things that you can control. And I guess focus on what you're grateful for. And being in Sydney, it's a beautiful day. It's sunny. I went for an ocean swim this morning, so I feel very grateful for that opportunity. How are you going?
I'm doing okay. I mean, I think I
Got a haircut?
I got a haircut, so hey, I don't have this huge, massive mane of hair, which is I'm a little bit sad about, but it's so much more manageable. Still,
Now it only takes you an hour to brush each day.
yeah, it's my yearly haircut. It's done. Done. No, it's been interesting this period of time, sort of like mental health up and down. I can't imagine what people are going down when they're in serious lockdown. So Melbourne, Victoria, my heart goes out to you with lockdown 2.0. That said, our guest today is in lockdown 2.0, so she can give us a little bit of insight. Really psyched and excited about this week's guest, and I'm going to switch you out of the picture for a second, Lauren. Sorry. Whoop. Because she's going to be talking about grit and purpose. Hey, here we go. So you're looking at me now. This next guest is a very, very good friend of ours, and I've been wanting on the show for a while. We were meant to get her on 2 weeks ago, but then Morgan got sick, so we had to can at the very last moment. So luckily she's slotted in this week. Now, I first met Samantha Gash, actually, I think it would have been about 2010, 2011. So about 9 or 10 years ago. And it was actually at the North Face 100, now known as the Ultra Trail Australia 100. And there was a chap at a checkpoint, I think it was checkpoint 5, wearing a Four Deserts, Grand Slam kind of jacket. And I remember coming up to this guy and going, hey, have you done the Four Deserts, which is just 250 kilometer ultra marathons in 4 deserts around the world, including China, the Gobi, I forget one, and Antarctica. And it's an amazing accomplishment. And I asked him, he's like, no, that's actually my girlfriend's. And in toddles in Samantha Gash, she's very petite. She's about 5'1" or so, running through, but is just got nerves of steel and is just an absolute beast when it comes to sort of ultra endurance running. So our guest today is none other than Samantha Gash. She has done some phenomenal things, including the Four Deserts Grand Slam, which is unbelievable in itself. But she's run across South Africa, roughly 1,900 kilometers. She's run across India, over 3,000 kilometers. I'll give you the exact kilometerage. 3,253 Ks across India. Now that's crazy. She's also been on Survivor Australia, where she actually met her husband, Mark Wales, who's ex-SAS, and they started a little romance, and I don't think the rest of the tribe liked that very well because they got booted out. So maybe,
Jealous.
We shouldn't do that. Jealous of Sam, jealous of Mark. Something was going on there, but I think they really won because they got married and they actually had a kid first, then got married. But the lovely little Harry, who is just such a ball of energy and light and is just this nice little mix of the two of them. They then did, as a couple with 2 other people, the world's toughest race just last year that is currently streaming on Amazon Prime, and I reckon they should have got more airtime because they're a kick-ass team. But today's guest is Samantha Gash. She is absolutely awesome, and we're going to start off with a little intro video that takes you to probably the harder times on that Run India project.
Finished in town, which sucks, to be honest. As a runner, it's not pleasant.
I really don't do well in the cities. I find it really claustrophobic.
There's like these little moments and I'm like, holy shit. How am I going to do this? Yeah, it's been a rough 12 hours, 10 hours. Yeah, I feel like I'm cooking on the inside. My stomach is really, really sore. People would normally be in bed after what I went through last night, so not going out for another 60k.
This isn't an elite sport. This is all mind. You do it because you want to and you believe in it. It's gonna hurt.
Samantha Gash, how are you?
Hi, Sam.
I'm like, oh gosh, that takes me back.
Takes me back.
Takes me there.
Yeah, exactly. It's. I want to see that whole movie.
Yeah, it's so funny how you talk about the first time when we met Jonesy and how like my partner at the time was wearing my jacket. And it's funny because he was wearing my jacket because there were so few females who did that race that they didn't cater for female sizes. So they just gave me a men's small. So I like spent all that money, did all that hard work, and I didn't even get to wear the jacket as a badge of honor afterwards.
It's so rough. Don't tell me he's still got it. Please tell me you've got it back though.
Oh,
No.
I lost it in the relationship breakdown.
Oh no! All right, we're gonna hunt him down and get that jacket back because it's I don't know. It's crazy that you didn't get to even keep that memento, but you've got all the memories. But for people that don't know, you were the youngest and the first female to do the Four Deserts Grand Slam in a calendar year, weren't you?
Yeah, in 2010, very few people had even kind of conceived to do it in like one calendar year. So a couple of years earlier, 2 guys did it. And in my year, even though I didn't ever intend to do all 4, like I just went out to Chile to just do the first one, kind of between the first and the second, I was like, oh, maybe I should give this a crack. And I make it seem like that was a seamless transition. It was a massive kind of place to get from thinking it was a bucket list item to going, no, this is your entire year. And then there was like 14 other people who were trying that year. So I think it was almost fortuitous that I can say I was the first woman to do it. But the reality was like just no other woman thought about it before that point.
Well, there always has to be a first, and I think you should claim it, take it, and run with it because it's pretty epic in itself. I mean, to do that amount of running in a calendar year is phenomenal. Like, you know, they say to some people, it's like, oh, you should only do a marathon every month or something like that, and that's all you should do, you know, because you'll damage your body. But here you are running across India, running across South Africa. You're knocking over, 40, 50, 60, up to 70 kilometers in a day. It's insane.
It's insane.
That.
So Sam, how do you, just for the people out there, I mean, you're a ultra runner. I'll tell you my story of how we met and how I think that you're Superwoman for very different reasons, but we'll get to that in a minute. But how did you start running? I mean, was it just one, have you always run? One day did you just put on your shoes and you're like, oh, I'm just going to crack out, a 10K? Because I know for me, even pre-motherhood, like 5Ks is a lot. I think the most I have ever run was 10 Ks, and I had to try. So how did your running journey start?
I think this is the, I guess, more interesting part of my story is that I wasn't born with the DNA of being like an athlete. I won't even say a runner, like any kind of athlete. My parents are not sporty. Like their versions of a sport is like pushing the mower on the block of land. But Dad had polio. Yeah.
Especially if it's not motorized, if it's one of those handheld ones.
And on a slope. So my mum's a demon. My parents are demons, but not in like a sporting lens. Dad had polio as a child, so was like up on a board for, the first 2 years of his life. In fact, his mother, who's Czech, who put him up on that board, like it seemed like such a cruel thing to do at the time, but that's actually why he survived. Like his limbs couldn't have coped the force of being able to like stand. So I guess the context of that is my parents are gritty, if we go to the topic of this conversation today, but they just didn't expose my sister or I to sports at all. So we were definitely kids that were a lot more into our academics. You can even go to the second photo in the our slideshow. Like I was more of a thespian. I like to think of myself as a actress, and I always got casted as the low status weirdo.
I'm gonna jump in. Do you want me to show that photo right now?
I saw this on the slide deck, and I was like, "Who is that?"
Oh,
I didn't realize you were an actress.
God. That's the wrong photo. Why's that's sorry, hold on. Oh,
that's okay, but that's what people know me. I think this is cool because the photo you're seeing right now is from the world's toughest race. That's what people think of me as, but the reality, my upbringing was more this kind of, I was playing a bitch. I was like, I never got the high status roles. I was low status, like I was always in chains or was, a servant, but maybe my height.
For a moment when I saw this, I thought it was a picture from Run India, and I freaked out. I was like, I have not heard this story. And Justin's like, oh, no, she's an actress. I was like, okay, I knew she was an ex-lawyer, but I have not heard this one. So continue.
Yeah, I studied a double degree in performing arts and law because I wasn't quite sure if I wanted my trajectory to be, work for a human rights-based, law organisation or be on Home and Away. So it's like, pretty much let me study both degrees. Let's hedge my bets. My dad said they're basically the same, acting or a lawyer, selling your soul, he says. So
you said it, not us.
Hey, I'm an ex-accountant CPA, so I hear that too.
So I still, even into like uni days, like sports wasn't part of my domain, but I did get to this place where I was like, you are really physically dormant. You don't ever do things when you don't know what the outcome will be. Of course you hit goals. Like I'm not saying I wasn't an ambitious person, but I played it safe. And so I just decided to write a bucket list of like everything that I was keen on doing. And in fact, I now say that I went on this yes mission to just start, because I think once you start saying yes to stuff, it's amazing what then comes your way. So it's like, you find opportunities, but then opportunities come to you. So in my middle of my 20s, I just did a bunch of different stuff. Like I lived out in the desert and performed circus arts for Indigenous children, which was hilarious and fun and exciting all at the same time. I went and backpacked out in North America, sleeping under the stars in the national parks, and I did my first marathon. And it was a massive leap for me because I had never even done like a 5K fun run. Mm-hmm. Running just wasn't fun to me, so I thought it was so weird to call it a fun run. But I did it, and then I just was like, did the marathon, and that was the transformational thing. And not because it was an amazing experience. Like I experienced the same thing that I think every person does. Like I hit the wall, and what I discovered in that moment, or maybe on reflection, there's nothing remarkable about the wall. Like we all hit it in so many parts of our life, but the difference between people who choose to live maybe a slightly more unconventional lifestyle are the ones that go from something that I do know to something that I don't know. There's always going to be this clunky phase in the middle where I'm trying to find my way. And the reality is most people quit at that part. And when you get to the other side of it, that's when you start to go, oh, well, if I did that and I had never experienced anything like that before, what is now possible? And you just start to see the world in a slightly different way.
100%. Yeah, no, I liken it to like learning how to drive a car, and I'll rephrase that, learning how to drive a manual. Because like you got to grind those gears. You've got to, as you're working it out, and it's awkward, it's hard, but once you do it for several times, then you work it out and it becomes seamless. So you can step change out of those different phases of your life to do hard things and lean into it.
But kind of going to that, I actually still think it's always hard. Like, I think just because you've experienced like passing through that wall or passing through that discomfort, I still think it always feels discomfort, but the reality is through experience, you know that you'll survive, and you know that that's a part of the process.
That's
so
it was so funny because I was struggling with this, Sam, and I wanted to pick your brain on this because, I mean, Justin's done some big expeditions. I've done one big expedition, but it was more just like you said, it was to test this kind of like what is possible, because it wasn't for me about, being an athlete by any means, but it was hard and I got over it. And then I kind of was hoping, I've transformed and now everything else will be a lot easier. However, come parenthood, come COVID, and I still get knocked on my ass daily, and it still is hard, and I still feel it, but I am able to always walk through it. But I think I had this preconception that once you've done kind of an amazing feat, that the world is a bit easier. How have you found kind of, you keep doing these amazing feats, do they get easier or harder, or how do you, like, where do they fit in your mind?
It's such a good thing. And the first thing I'll say, Lauren, it knocks you on your feet because you're a human. Like, that, I think they knock everyone on their feet. And in the world of like buzzword of resilience, the reality is we actually all are born resilient. We're all born like, fighting our way through survival, through like insurmountable challenges. And it's so interesting right now in this day and age where everyone is trying to find their resilience. And the reality is, I think it's important to ask ourselves, where have we lost our resilience?
Yeah.
Because we were actually born with it. I think it's in the constraints of today's, society where we live in like stress mode all the time. We weren't meant to be in flight or flight response all the time. So we've like completely shot ourselves in many respects through this modern day age. But that wasn't the case back in back in the day when really you hit stress because you were trying to fight a tiger. But we're chronically in it. So I think that's something that's more important. How do we reduce the chronic stress to actually allow ourselves to operate how we should operate as human beings? But I will say, like, I have a significant fears, and I think that's because I come from the background of not having this as a part of the way I was grown up. So I'm still really scared of heights. I still find the first stage, the first couple of days of every long endurance race that I ever do brutalizing and filling me with fear and anxiety about my potential to kind of keep taking that other step. But if I am there for the right reasons and I've done the right type of work leading into it, I know that I can get through that. And that's the difference. But those things are important now, and since becoming a mother, doing it for the right reasons looks a little bit different, and doing the right type of work also looks different. So like I've never not finished my major projects, but I will sometimes not finish the steps in between to the major project because it's not as important. So hopefully that answers it. But I love this stuff. I love going beyond my known. And I can see how people can become an adrenaline junkie because they want, what's the next step? What's the next step? But the question for me is not keep making it harder, bigger, faster, longer, hotter. It's about connecting other important pieces of my life into that picture to make it a more tangible and valuable puzzle.
So I really want to dive in. I love that. And your two words today, which for you are kind of, the yin and yang, which is grit and purpose, or you just can't separate them. So I really my passion and what I think you're superhuman is this purpose side of you. And I really want to dive into this in a minute. But just to round out the grit, I think it's interesting about where have we lost our resilience. And I think it's interesting that you said, look, I was a gritty person and I was a perfectionist and I wouldn't do something if I didn't know the answer. I think for most people who are struggling with resilience are in that realm. Like you're bred to achieve, but you're bred to achieve in a linear fashion, whether that's in law or in education or in corporate career. And so we lose this ability to be able to jump out when things are uncertain. And I think that is a really interesting thing that adventure does, which I think is so interesting that you left the safe world to go into adventure. Because like for Justin, he's never been in that world. So we struggle in different ways where I'm like, I actually need, like I'm a perfectionist and I really struggled to not let perfection stand in the way of progress. Also, I don't want to fail because it's very uncomfortable for me. But if I'm going to do something outside of my comfort zone, it's going to include failure or else it wouldn't be uncomfortable. So how did you jump out of that and say, screw this, I'm going to say yes to everything and leave this kind of trajectory?
And I know you're not meaning it to sound that way, but even in the summation of it, and sometimes I get nervous as a corporate speaker that it sounds like it's packaged in this nice, perfect box with a little bow on it. You know, I just arrived in this place and now I'm an adventurous woman. And the reality is like, it's not linear. You go back and forth, you move around. And the fact that both Jonesy and I are corporate speakers, you know, it speaks to the fact that we're still tied into the need for a degree of certainty and stability. So I don't think you ever just go, I'm an adventure. I don't care about like having a roof over my head and food on the table. It's just that your appetite for differing degrees of uncertainty and risk change. And I'm also like a lawyer by trade, so I'm like highly risk adverse. And so like my excitement about the adventure world is that it challenges my default settings. And I recently, you know, I've got a podcast too, and I recently interviewed my good friend Sarah Holloway, and she's like me, like we always want to, because of our background as a lawyer, where we get critiqued for not putting like, you know, crossing the T and dotting the I, it was very hard to break from that mold because that's how you got affirmed, you got valued, and to all of a sudden go, I'm going to put something out into the universe, whether it be my body in an environment where I have no idea what's going to happen, because how can you possibly know what your body and your mind are going to do running 3,500 Ks across a country? Or putting out a podcast when you don't even know what it is to interview someone on a podcast platform. Like, of course, there's going to be an evolution of growth. And one thing I say to people all the time is, how can you say, A, you like something, or B, you're bad at something unless you try? And invariably in that trying process is like the evolution of growth. And some people have a high rate of growth because they're open to, you know, growth mindset, taking feedback, analyzing what they've done. And some people are a little bit more closed off to that. And I would say their rate of growth can be a little bit slower. I don't know if that answered the question, but what I would say is it took me a while to realize that I didn't need a lot of the certainty that I thought I depended on. And now I've gotten to a place where I just trust that I'm doing the things that are really important to me. And so I am able to let go and go, well, I don't know, particularly now with COVID in lockdown, like within a matter of a week, my entire workforce and every goal that I set for myself for like a year just disappeared. And I realized that all of a sudden, like all my stuff in adventure was training me to this very point. And of course I have mental lows, and we talked about on this conversation, like I got my period last week, and it's amazing in lockdown when you have your period, you feel like the world is crashing on you even more because you can't do the things that used to distract you from like how shitty it is to have your period. And I've had to like utilize all those things that I've learned in adventure into like my home life. And it's funny because we think that we should be creatures of comfort at home, but that's not what I'm used to anymore. So I feel like, yeah, it's a whole world, and we're all experiencing it right now. And like so many of the topics that I used to talk about just sound, I mean, Jonesy, you might feel it too. Like I used to talk about pivoting and it sounded so like novel. And now I'm like, okay, we all pivot every single moment. And that's kind of refreshing because we need to know how to do that to survive.
Well, it's awesome that this is the best thing that's happened about COVID is that everyone's going through this process. Everyone who's been forced to go through this process. And so we're all collectively as a generation, as a group, as the world, the planet, been forced to adapt. And that's an amazing thing for the future. It really is. You reminded me in something that you said just in that last couple of minutes. I used to have a saying, I've forgotten it until just now. And that saying was that I'll try anything twice. And I think as I'm getting older, I've started to forget that a little bit. And what that means is like, I'll try anything because like you don't know unless you actually try something. But you don't know if the first time's going to be an aberration as well. If you actually, like, you might run a marathon and you go, oh, that was terrible. But you're like, I should probably run another one just to make sure, you know? I think that's...
That's also a really good motto for parenthood as well. Like someone said to me, just because it doesn't work the first time doesn't mean that it won't work the second time. So try it at least. So I don't. Once you become a parent, every single thing that you know in other parts of your life, you're like, does this apply to parenthood?
So this is now I'm going to tell my. I don't think this is when we first met, Sam, but this is when I was like, fuck, she's amazing. I think it was Harry was 2 months old, and you were doing a Business Chicks keynote.
Yeah.
And I came along to cheer you on and listen and to be a part of the day. And you were just like 2 months old. You know, your body's obviously different. I mean, you're a like ultra fit person, and here you are breastfeeding, and you like had Harry on the boob, and then you popped off, and then you get up on stage and you're looking glam and you're looking self-confident and amazing, and you're very articulated, and Harry's sitting in the front, and then, you know, that's over and you pop back, and we were hanging out in the green room, and you have Harry up and down, and then people are taking pictures and coming meeting you, and it literally, he just slotted into, you know, this world that you had created. And I was thinking to myself, oh my God, at 8 weeks with Morgan, I was crying in the corner, you know, not looking like a shell of myself. So to see you in flight in that way, you know, whether you were faking it till you were making it, or whether it was just easy because of all the things that you had done, really, for me, is even more impressive than all of your runs combined, because I know how hard motherhood is, and I know how much the old you and the new you sometimes don't go together. So that was just, you know, I give you a lot of respect for that, of how you seemed like you juggled it. Was it that easy for you as it looked?
I love it how like the woman who like took her toddler across the outbacks, like commending me for managing like a toddler, I mean a 2-month-old, and speaking on stage where someone did my makeup and you held my baby whilst I was doing stuff. So I had a lot of support around that, and it's so funny how we can recognize strength in other people, but we aren't as good at tapping into it ourselves, because there's a lot of stuff that you've done, Lauren, that I don't think you realize, like the power and grit that it took you to do it. So like mama admiration from me to you, like, you know, and I have more respect for like mothers since becoming a mother, because you know how challenging it is. And I would say those first 6 months, I felt like I was drugged. Like, I can't believe the stuff that I did with Harry. Like, I took him to every state and territory in Australia on every talk that I did. I flew to the US, and then I flew back to Sydney for a talk, and then the next day I took all with Harry, and then went to India the next day with Nick, who we're getting on later on. And we were in India for 3 days on the ground doing like random stuff. And yeah, obviously with a toddler now that would be so different, but with a baby it just seemed to, it worked. And I guess what I would say to like mothers, and I guess since becoming a mother I've had more mothers who have kind of connected with me and my story, you just got to go with what feels right. If what you want to do is stay at home and create the bubble, embrace it, like go with it. But if you feel that you want to go on a plane and do something, give it a go. And if it doesn't work, who cares? Like, no one judges you. You're always going to be your harshest critic. Just try not to be defined by the way you think things are meant to look, or the way that you think other people think they're meant to look. And I guess going into the adventure world, I learned that that's the lesson that I've learned. Like, do it on your terms, because it's your time on the planet, and you want to look back on your time going, I did it on my way. And there's that cool quote from Bronnie Ware, who's an Australian palliative care nurse, who says, like, she's got a book called The 5 Common Regrets of the Dying, and one of them is like, I wish I let myself be happier. And the other one was basically to the sense of like, I wish I didn't do what other people thought I should do. And like, why do we have to wait till our deathbed to realise that we need to live life on our own terms a bit more?
Look, I might not be a mother, but I feel like I'm a very effeminate man, so I think I'm going to jump in. But no, what you're saying there really, really resonates with me as well. I mean, like, you see this, I saw this, you know, books out there in particular. You might look at Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In, you know, telling everyone to lean in and that. And it's, or you know, a sense that from society you should be doing X, Y, Z as a dad, you should be acting this way. Man, it's so bad for mental health trying to manufacture yourself into someone else's standards, it just really, really sucks, and it just leaves you in a really bad position. So it's very sage advice there, Samantha Gash. Everyone, please listen to it. You know, find your own way and follow your own path that works for you, because we're all unique individuals.
Well, I'd like to say the Outback obviously took grit, but in my headspace, I did it because I was like, I'm at a really low point and I'm really struggling, and I have lost myself, and I want to redefine myself, and I need to push myself out of this comfort zone to do it. So I was really on kind of like a personal quest of, you know, the next phase of my, I guess, evolution of self to do that. So for me, it was, you know, coming from a very low point, and I did not want to lean in to do everything. I was like, I can't do corporate, I can't do full-time motherhood, so I'm just going to take a break and give myself some time to walk. Yeah.
Hallelujah. Like, I mean, I think that right now, like, I'm a realistic optimist. I've always defined myself that way, but I've also seen it through COVID, like that it really is true. And a part of this realistic optimist is the realism part is that you acknowledge the hardship. You go, yeah, this is kind of shit. Like, I don't know if I'm making money for another 12 months. I plan to run across the United States, and I got all the funding, and now that's gone. So like, it owns that situation, and then it goes, well, how do I turn that around? Or how do I, and so that's kind of how I've lived COVID. And I think there's very few opportunities in life where we are forced to stop, and a global pandemic forced people to. And the question is, like, do you need to reach rock bottom, or do you need to have a global pandemic to kind of do a bit of a stock take on where you are and what you're doing? And Lauren, you kind of did it when you were like, okay, am I going to go back to work? I'm a mother. What does it look like? Yeah. But I feel like we all need to take these opportunities through our life to just kind of question the trajectory that we're on and make sure that we're in the driving force for it.
Completely. Yeah. And I think, I mean, I've seen Justin go through the keynote where his calendar was wiped, you know, and it was devastating, even for a person that's a massive optimist. How are you, like, can you give tips on when you're having those shit days and you're like, wow, I'm supposed to be running across America, or wow, I just got a notification that I had a gig that was really important to me and I was supposed to be speaking in front of this amazing crowd. What goes through your mind? Because that to me is really interesting with people, because it's a mind game right now. You know, everyone's static. It's not a physical game, it's a mental game. And you're the queen of mental games, it seems like, in terms of how you view things.
And I think because I've done a lot of work on the mental side of me, I am surprised how I've kind of relatively seamlessly gone through this time. I haven't, I just keep saying like it wasn't meant to be. Like if I'm ever injured, as opposed to dwelling that I can't do what I'm known for or what I love to do, I always go, how can I use this opportunity of time that I don't normally have to spend in some other facet of my life? So with the corporate speaking, like I've never said that that's the only thing that I do. And part and parcel of being an entrepreneur is that I think what's worked for me is having many buckets of my outlet. You know, I'm an endurance athlete and an adventurer, so that's one side. I'm a corporate speaker, and then I do the social impact work. And so they're all individual things that I have interwoven together. But when I can't do one of them, I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to focus on one of the other ones, like wholeheartedly, like sink my teeth into that. And so that's kind of what Mark and I did. We're like, okay, well, what do we actually need to survive right now? So I think communication with your partner of like, what are the fundamentals, stripping back what you don't need. So let's say that 70% of our income went overnight. So what can we remove out of our outgoings to survive with a 30% income coming in, and how long can we do that for? Who can we lean on support for? And I kind of find myself unconsciously reading and watching tales of adversity, and I guess I find it comforting in the sense that I know that people have done it far worse than what I'm going through right now. And every single time, what is distilled from that is what is the fundamentals of our needs. And it's always like the love and connection of our family and our friends and food. You know, I'm watching Alone, the series where 10 people kind of go out into the wilderness. They get 10 survival items and they have to fend for themselves. And they don't even have a camera crew documenting their journey. They have to film it themselves. And it's how long can you survive before you tap out, and you don't know how long everyone else is going for.
And
it's super,
And the winner was I'm just trying to think about it. He was up in Alaska or in the Canadian wilderness. Is this that one?
They did the first 2 in Vancouver Island and then Patagonia. Then they've gone a bunch in the Arctic. And so Mark and I have been watching these, which we wouldn't normally have the time to watch, but we got ample time at our disposal now. And we watch it and we just go like, we actually don't need that much. And it's been this like, it's kind of liberating. And we kind of go, we spent so much time in the air. Now we are forced to be grounded. What do we take out of being grounded? So that's what we do. Like we stock take on what we need, remove what we don't need. And I would say like we've lived a life where we don't have high overheads. And I thank myself that when money was more flourishing, that we didn't get caught up in thinking, well, we now need to have a second house or a holiday home, or let's have a fancy car that we lease out. Like that's just not kind of how we're wired, and it's fortunate because of that.
Yeah, you and I, Sam, both know some people that are like in the speaking world that have like got those extremely expensive houses, and and you're like, ooh, events industry not so good right now.
Well, and I think that's so aligned. Like Justin and I did a massive cull of our expenses, and same thing. People are like, how do you make your life work? And we're like, we live really small. We do live in Bondi, but we live in a 2-bedroom apartment. And in COVID, that has been challenging because we now have 2 kids in a 2-bedroom apartment, one 9-month-old and 4
outside to play as much.
And so now we've pivoted and we're moving down to Tassie onto a farm in a very basic 1940s tiny farmhouse. But we're really excited to we always wanted to do it and it was never the right time. And now it is. But that wasn't a part of the plan.
I hope you have space for the Wales Gash clan.
Oh, no.
Definitely do. We have a spare room, spare bunk bed.
Spare bunk bed. Harry's going to slot straight in lower bunk. So, yeah.
Yep, Morgan will be very excited. And she's getting chickens. She's named them.
Has she named them already?
Yes, she has.
Oh, no. We're going to be allowed to eat them then?
No, we can't. Justin wants to get a pig. And I was like, and he's like, but then it'll be bacon. And I was like, you cannot let her take care of it.
Harry, because we have chickens, and I guess that's kind of the cool thing. Like we've really been enjoying the fact that we live quite rurally.
Because you're in Victoria. Just to explain it for people that aren't around you, so you're in the state of Victoria in Australia, but you live out kind of in the bush.
You're in Dandenongs, aren't you?
Yeah, we live in the Dandenong Ranges, which is a national park. Which interestingly, we've been classified as metropolitan Melbourne. So like.
Which does not look that way from your Instagram when you're like idyllically running with Harry through the bushes, and I'm like, oh God, I wish my runs looked like that. I'm like dodging people down on Bondi.
We totally are not Metro Melbourne, but for the classification of stage 4 lockdown, they've decided to lump in a rural community into that. Let's not make a comment, but I mean, I go out for runs. I don't see anyone. We've really been doing our best to adhere to the very strict lockdown measures, which include a curfew. You only were allowed to exercise for 1 hour a day. Obviously, masks. You can only do one person in the family can go to the shopping centre once a day to get groceries. Like there's no such thing as popping down to Bunnings and picking up something from Bunnings. Like you've got to do click and collect, and then they check your ID in the car before, then they won't let you go into the store. It gets brought to you by someone in PPD. So like long story short, like I live in a rural community, but we're in stage 4 lockdown with no cases of COVID. So it kind of makes it feel like you're in this apocalypse, which maybe suits Mark, who's an SAS troop commander and like got a bow and a generator.
Is he loving this? He's like, who am I going to...
He's like, I was born for this situation.
I've just got a picture of him right now. He's wearing a kill capture jacket with a bow on his back, and he's just running around the yard, just patrolling the perimeter, I reckon.
It's so funny, but you've got to take the funniness out of what is actually really. It's very. I think we're going to come out of this time, and people are going to be like, you didn't live what I lived, so how can you empathize? And I'm like really careful because like my parents live in they have a house right near me, but they chose to live up in the beach, which isn't in lockdown. And I'm just like, you chose freedom versus being near us. And I noticed myself kind of saying it to them the other day, and I was like, no, Sam, like it's good they have freedom, but it's like people in Sydney and Brisbane or whatever it is trying to make a commentary on like our lockdown, and it's kind of like, you don't know what it's like.
No.
And it's the same thing too with industries. I mean, I know that I've even been sensitive around like people's industries that are flourishing or even just on par, and people are like, yeah, this is so hard, and I was like, your family didn't get a 80% 90% cut, you know, like, which is pretty scary when you just had a baby too, like. But then I'm like, no, everybody's facing it in their own way, whether it's the single person that just went through the breakup or the new mom or the lockdown in Melbourne. You know, I do feel like it's really challenging people in a variety of ways, just not the same.
Yeah, and to kind of close that off, like everyone experiences stress and emotion in a different way, but when you're at the brink, it's hard to have empathy and compassion and grace for other people's experiences, and that is the beauty of the outdoors because it's like a reset. You know, we have put a couple of things in play in our like family dynamic of our day that, you know, where we turn the laptop off, you know, we shut down the phone and we go outside as a family. And it doesn't matter how bad the day might have felt. It always just makes us feel instantly better. So with you guys going to Tasmania, I know that there's been challenging moments being in Sydney and having your lives looking very different and not going to, you know, Laura and your family are all in the States. Yeah. I'm really excited for you guys to experience like the power of green trees all around you and like that kind of mobility that comes from that farm lifestyle.
Yeah. I'm excited. Like I've always lived in a city. I grew up in Seattle, lived in San Francisco and been here, but I love outdoors. I work in sustainability. So I'm going to get to learn to finally farm and be a chicken mother. I'm very excited.
Well, I also feel slightly guilty because it's going to sound a bit funny. Like April in Bondi wasn't a great period of time. Like it wasn't. And like the rest of Australia, I think was very much judging the eastern suburbs of Sydney. And then like, you know, we were feeling a little bit, you know, lockdown and horrible. And
because we were inside because we didn't want to be out. Some people are taking it
seriously, other people aren't. And then Melbourne went through what they went. We're like, actually, no, we didn't have it that bad at all. But during that period of time, I feel bad because I had an escape. You know, we were not meant to be, you know, you could go and do some exercise in the park for an hour or whatever it was. But I could go diving. You know, I could still do that. I could get my hit of nature, and Lauren couldn't do that. She wasn't even allowed to go to the beach.
Like I went to meditate on the golf course because I couldn't walk down by the beach because there was too many people. So I meditated and I had the police helicopter me because I had sat down. And you can't sit down even if you had just walked or exercised. So it was just a weird utopian. It just felt very weird.
Even when we got our coffee today, like the police were going around and we're like, oh, is the mask firmly on my face enough? And I'm like, oh. So it is like, yeah.
And then you have a toddler, you know, who's, I mean, that's a whole other thing. One question I want to ask you, because I did have it on my list. You mentioned about you've put in some routines on your family. And I've noticed like I struggle especially in new baby land. I had this with Morgan and I didn't get diagnosed till later, but I struggled with postnatal depression. And then Dylan came and I was feeling really good and we were kind of nailing life. And then COVID happened and financially that added a whole layer of stress. So I really have to watch my mental health, especially when I have small children, because I feel like my routine of wellness, which I can usually put as a priority, goes out the door because I'm worried about keeping somebody alive and now multiple people alive. So I have struggled and I've realized
very hard work.
Pardon? He is. I mean, it's, you know, it's like two babies right here.
There's three in the house. What are you talking about?
And Ollie, our dog.
Oh, four.
But I've realized that, long story short, I've realized that I just need to get out in the morning for a walk and throw myself into the ocean, even if it's the last thing I want to do because it sets my day up. And mental health, that's huge. So just for people that are really struggling in Melbourne and lockdown or globally, what are some things that you really have leaned on during these challenging times?
It's always the fundamentals. It's never like brain surgery. It's getting enough like fluids. I'm serious. Like it's the simple stuff. Like I'm not a great drinker of water, but it's oh guys, let's have a sip.
Wow, group drink. That's really, really weird. Riveting.
Group drink on our weird pseudo couch with Sam in the middle. Oh, Sam. It's like a group hug.
Like we're all sitting on the couch together.
Great
so it's like getting enough water in. Oh, people love it. Getting enough water in, eating healthy food. Like at the beginning of the lockdown, we were definitely getting into like, I'm obsessed with salt vinegar chips. And I was like, oh, we're home so much. Let's have a large packet of salt vinegar chips every day. And then you just don't feel good. Obviously getting outside, and for us it was about working on our forms of communication because we're not used to being around each other so much, and so it was working out how to make relationship conversation about like just the two of us versus like the chores of the house or just like the everyday stuff. You know, like when you're living with people all the time, it doesn't feel exciting. You might be kind of doing a little bickering about who hasn't cleaned the dishes or that kind of stuff. Kind of going, okay, how do we have like kind of quarantine some date style conversation, like your ass looks good in those pants. Like making sure you kind of get a bit of that into your week. My friend gave me a really good one.
Bend over, Justin.
All right, here we go.
I think
what about it, Lauren? What about it?
after 7 years of marriage, our romance is like, Justin, can you please close the door when you're going to the toilet so that the whole house
I think
is in there
that's
with
romantic.
you. And we're in a very small house.
I thought about you, so there we go.
Okay, I'm going to give you guys one. I'm going to give you one.
Yes,
to do.
we need help. Yes.
All right.
Get a jar, and then each of you just put in 5 different things of what you would like to do. I'm not saying on what topics they need to be, but whatever you want, put them in a jar and kind of have a thing like maybe Wednesday, every Wednesday, someone has to pick something out of the jar, and that's what you have to do. And it's just something, it kind of makes a bit of spice, excitement. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't require money. It just requires your creativity and imagination and willingness to go with the flow.
I like this. And can you say no, though? You know, if something
No,
really
you have
odd
to,
comes
just
up.
like Sam said, it's a yes,
No,
Missy.
I assumed consent.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, should we review our consent laws? But okay, let's go with it.
Oh, God.
Things that you put on that piece of paper, you know, the other person will be okay with. Otherwise, maybe you've got some other communication things you've got to talk about.
Peanut butter and toast. There we go. That's why the first place I'm going to go. No, I'm joking.
Should we wind back? So, Sam, one of the points of this podcast is just like
What was
you
that?
said.
To talk about our sexual lives?
Yeah,
much,
you know,
actually,
periods,
yeah.
check, sexual lives. But one of the points is what you said, where you've been looking at people, you know, you've been specifically watching people that have had it a lot harder because it kind of makes you feel good. And that was the whole point of this adventure thinking, was that, you know, Justin was kind of flapping around and we were both in this like shitty state back in March. And we were like, you know, why aren't we bringing some of these, you know, other stories down from the mountaintop to our living room to help people so that we can showcase, you know, these amazing things that other people have done, and they've turned these really crappy, you know, or difficult situations into building, you know, going from good to great. And I think you epitomize that. And also, given that all these keynote speakers are grounded, normally you could never get in people's diaries, you know, people be flying all around, you know, or they're on stage. So I thought this was a really fun thing to share a bit of your keynote. You know, you really inspired me on stage. And I think we haven't done that we were going to jump right into a little story.
We normally
about
jump straight into the story, but like we got sidetracked because we like you.
chatting.
We've missed talking to you, Sam. So we just started talking about periods and stuff.
You always talk to Justin. You guys are always talking about the keynote world, and I'm like, I miss Sam.
Yeah, I need to not call Justin and call you.
You can call both of us, but the
Same
motherhood, yeah.
I'll just call Mark. I'll just go, hey Mark, how's it going?
Mark and I'll just start chatting.
Show me your bow.
Oh my God.
That's creepy. Once again, we've gone to a creepy
It's not
level.
creepy. I saw his bow on Instagram the other day. He was
Mark
back.
are really good. And
What is he hunting? Your chickens? What's he out there hunting?
He's actually been doing some like when things are open, he was doing like bow and arrow shooting, like whatever it's called. He also, you know, he's obviously just preparing for every situation.
Preparing for the end of the world.
Yeah, he that was his kind of thing, like learn something that he's wanted to do before, and he's really into gear, so he loves like
I can see
learning
that.
and obsessing over the bow and getting the box for the bow and spending 3 hours putting an arrow in the box. Like it's that's a part of what wires him, and I think this is a cool thing with like adventure is, or a pause is, you can start to think of like what excites me, or what do I want to learn or play with, and it's kind of what I feel like I've been doing over the last decade, like making sure that I lean into the stuff that excites and interests me.
I did like seeing that video of him just like slowly putting his bow in, and then arrow by arrow, and then he drops one though. He's like, oh, and then he picks it back up and puts it in. I'm like, yeah, that's a man that loves it.
Says
Anyway.
the man who, when we got a new tent, I literally saw him in the corner of the living room sniffing the new tent poles for like an extended period of time. And I was
didn't-
like, this is creepy.
didn't
Asking
sniff
for a
it.
friend, is this normal?
No, okay. Anyway, I like some of the DACC tent poles. Anyway, let's go to your story. Less about me sniffing tent poles. That's really wrong.
I want to hear more about the purpose side. And I know that you're going to hit on that with your story, because you raised $1 million Just
So,
I don't want to opt it, but it was the most amazing thing that I had seen. On the side, after being a mother and doing all the things, she's like, I'm just going to raise a cheeky little support for the bushfires. And it was crazy. So I want to get into that.
No, it's unbelievable. And I wanted to leave that for the end because that's the end of your presentation. So I want to throw to you, Sam. I want to go back to that photo of you looking really, really amazing.
Let's go.
This one.
Let's go to the next one. Let's flip to the next one because I guess you already know the context of, I don't think that I've come from a background of thinking adventure was even the world in which I could play in. And this has kind of been a bit of a mantra for me, this idea that if you want something that you've never had, then actually it's always going to be up to you to do something that you've never done. And it sounds so beautiful and poetic in a quote like that, but I think the reality of it is a lot harder for people. But the truth of it goes, the more that you push into discomfort and experience it, the easier it is to go to that place. It's always going to feel hard, but it's going to be easier. So I guess my first thing was about doing the Four Deserts Grand Slam in 2010. And I always still go back to that story because it was really the first time I tried something so out of the realm of what I knew. And I think when you try new things, there's always going to be equal doses perhaps of naivety and ego at play. And it's about tempering the two of them and bringing those things out at the right time because both of them have power and importance, but they can also be your downfall if you don't know how to moderate them. So naivety, I think, is something that lets you do things, like lets you bring bravery and boldness into an arena. And ego is similarly minded. But if you go to the next slide, Jonesy, one of my biggest strengths is that I feel that if you stand on the shoulders of giants, you can actually cut time dramatically. So I went from running a marathon to doing a 250-kilometer ultra and then doing 4 of them in 1 calendar year. And whilst I'm a moderate, build up, I think that if you can sometimes not think that you have to redefine the rules yourself or create them, to look to the experiences of other people, it can be really empowering. And so these 3 guys here, with the guy to the shorter guy to the front, Ray Zahar being now my mentor and coach, they ran the entire length of the Sahara Desert. Flick to the next slide, Jonesy. And press the button and it'll show the map. So this is the route that these guys did. It was over 7,000 kilometres. They ran side by side. They averaged 70 Ks a day and they didn't take one day off. And they actually wrote blogs along the way, and they also released a film that was narrated by Matt Damon called Running the Sahara. And as I was preparing for the Four Deserts Grand Slam, sometimes you can feel that what you're doing is like the hardest thing possible because it's your hardest thing. But when you start to research, you realize you'll never be doing the hardest thing. There's always someone who's done something more challenging. And therefore, we always have so much we can learn from others. And these guys would talk about, like, their plan A was to go this route, but plan B, C, and D were all about on the basis that they couldn't cross the borders at certain points. And so plan E would be adding significant amount of like mileage to the overall tally. And I remember thinking, these guys are literally running into the unknown. How do you even prepare for something when you don't know if you're going to be able to cross a border at a certain point? Because if you guys look at the map, like a lot of the places that they were going through are not the most politically stable places on Earth. So I don't imagine they could have just, 4 months in advance had a border permit that would actually allow them entry into the country. And so on the next slide, this was the quote by Ray Zahar that made me realise the power of the mind. And it says, the challenge of ultra running is 90% mental and the other 10% is all in our heads. And I feel for everybody, this is a really comforting thing. It says our past experiences or the thoughts of insecurity and self-doubt in our mind don't have to define what's going to be in our future or what we choose to do next. And so with that armed in my mind, when I did the 4 deserts, I just kept saying to myself, this is not physical training. Like, who cares that I've never done 250 kilometers? This is my opportunity to train my mind to not just cope in this environment, but to cope with all the other challenges that are coming my way. And it's been true, i.e. a global pandemic, I have used the same things that I learned then. And so I would say over 5 years, my purpose wasn't outward, it was very inward. Very much like what you said, Lauren. My purpose was about redefining who I was, how mentally and physically strong I was, and could I tip my axis in a different direction than where I was tracking as a corporate lawyer. And so the next picture shows me doing the 4 Deserts Grand Slam. And like the feature of those races is that you've got to carry everything that you need to survive in a pack on your back. And being under 5 foot, I was carrying about 25% of my body weight on my back on day one. And I remember looking around at the other competitors on the start line, and they might have been like 6'3", carrying a pack that might have been like less than 10% their body weight. And I realized it's very easy to focus on the negative. Before I had taken one step, I decided to think that I was at a disadvantage. And the reality was, of course, I'm carrying more weight on my pack. That is a disadvantage, but everybody has some kind of disadvantage. It can be something very obvious, like the weight on my back. But for other people, it can be something that they've gone through in their past, the stress that they've experienced getting to the start line, an underlying health condition. Like we all carry baggage into whatever space we're in. Those who get through those challenges are the ones that just mentally focus on one step at a time. And, that saying like relentless forward motion, where we might visualize something to look a certain way, but the reality is you've got to detach yourself from the picture of the perfect or the perfect picture. And so the next image is when I did this race in India called La Ultra the High. And later we're getting Nick Davidson to come on, but he was one of my crew members for this. And it was running 222 kilometres nonstop between a northern region of India where the elevation reached 6,000 metres above sea level and it averaged at 4,500 metres. So that was the challenging feature of that race, as well as running 222 kilometres nonstop. But I talk about this race, and I've done many challenging events in my time, but this is the race that really made me question what I was doing. I got to this peak called Tanglang La. It was the second peak of the race, and I was dehydrated, hypothermic. I was absolutely smashed, like physically and mentally, and I had my team members all the way around me, and they were just doing everything they could to get me to move forward. And I remember thinking, imagine if I rallied a group of people to do something for a purpose bigger than me just trying to get from the start line to a race to the finishing line of a race. And, I could judge myself really critically on that, going, how selfish am I that I pulled all these people just for me? But I chose to flip it around and go, maybe that's one of my strengths. I'm able to compel people to join forces with a mission that I create. Let's elevate that mission to actually be so much more impactful and important. And flipping to the next slide, that's truly where I kind of started to shift my there's always purpose at play. Like I feel like everyone's always doing something for a certain reason, and I guess that's what a purpose is. But when we can take our purpose from being inward to outward, I feel like that is like the next level. But you can't do that until you know yourself. Like there's a lot of people who are trying to do running for change or adventure for change. But I will say from experience, you're probably not going to make a significant impact on the outward purpose if you don't know who you are. You don't know your strengths, your weaknesses, how to work as a team. Don't be afraid to take the time to get to know yourself first. And so my biggest driver is really exploring the barriers to why children are unable to access a quality education. And so my projects over the last really 6 years have been about how to use the vehicle of adventure, long distance running, to bring attention to the various barriers that children are unable to access a quality education. And I would say, since becoming outward driven with my purpose, it has transformed my life. It's made me think about teams in a different way. The respect that I have for my body is greater because I realize like every footsteps actually count. So let me use them for something so important. And the really first foray into that space, next slide, please, Jonesy, was when I ran across the Simpson Desert. It was very close to home. It was 379 kilometres nonstop in in Australian desert, which you guys obviously went through during the outback. And it was about raising attention to an issue with like accessibility of education facilities in rural Indigenous communities. And then, I think what happens is you build from experiences. You learn every time you do something, what works, what doesn't work. And then the next kind of big project I did was when I ran across South Africa. And we were looking at the high cost of feminine hygiene products for women in sub-Saharan Africa, and that causal link of girls dropping out of school when they have their periods, and then ultimately dropping out of education altogether, because girls and women in these communities will often be resorted to using bark, stick, newspapers, like any article of material that they can find, because they can't afford a feminine hygiene product. In fact, back in 2014, when I did this project, 80% of women in sub-Saharan Africa couldn't afford traditional feminine hygiene products, which is pretty mind-blowing. And that project was amazing, and we raised our $50,000 that we wanted to do, but it taught me my greatest lesson. When you are disconnected geographically to the reason that you are out there, it's very hard for that to still be the driving force. And so because Mimi, who is the runner that I ran with, we were so rural in South Africa, we actually didn't see many kids. And so we very much got caught up in the world of the run. And that's not kind of why I want to run anymore. Like, I don't want to get always lost into just my footsteps and my discomfort, because the reality is I've chosen my discomfort. And therefore, I accept the suffering that's going to come my way. I want to be able to story tell on the people that I want to get to know better. And so, we talked about India before, and you saw that snapshot. But the most, I guess, powerful project that I ever got to be a part of is because of the people that I got to meet along the way. A lot of people will talk about the funds that I raised, or, that I was a champion for change. But I can hand on heart say, I learned more through getting to meet people along that way and hear about their stories, which has actually enriched my life, which sometimes makes me go, there truly is no altruistic thing that you'll ever do, because you actually gain so much from it. And so if we kind of flip to that next slide, Jonesy, the next two images really are, it's what Run India was about. Every couple of days as I ran across India, I was meeting with families in, this was a rural town, this was a group of girls in Shillong, and they would talk to me, and we would try and showcase their stories in real time, and then in a long form documentary kind of after the project. We raised $200,000 to fund 6 education projects along the course, and I got to meet a lot of those communities. But it was the awareness building as well. And it was the ripple effect of, if you can use your time and talents on this planet to support community and to support other people, one, you personally will benefit, but two, you never know what actions might follow from that. And I've also learned that you actually don't need to know what actions follow from it, because I think sometimes when people say their objective is to be inspiring, I think it's really dangerous, because you can't control how other people will respond to what you do, and nor should you try. You should do things because it means something to you. And that's kind of the tenets of my purpose-driven projects. I believe it hand on heart, and because I believe it so strongly, time and time again, I have realized that I can mentally and physically push myself far further than I ever thought was capable. I could not have run across India if I wasn't doing it for the reason that I did it, and if I hadn't spent 2 years beforehand preparing for it, because that put my skin in the game. Mentally, physically, financially, which was all reasons to, the first month of that project was really, really hard. And I think that skin in the game builds up resilience. So if we kind of flip to the next one, Jonesy, which is there it is. I actually think the greatest lesson that I could give to anyone in this session right now, or in any aspect of life, is the concept of being willing to create the next best plan. For anyone who is A-type personality, like Lauren, you and I are very similarly minded this way, who love to put a lot of effort in preparing to get to a start line, which is very, very important. You've got to do your risk mitigation, your due diligence, you've got to do all that stuff. But when you get to a start line, there is an element of succumbing to what is the environment, and be willing to go, yes, I planned for 2 years to be here, but what is going to get me to the next phase of this is to be aware, in tune, and in the moment to what's happening around me. And running across India really taught me that. And it came to play when Nick and I put together the relief run at the beginning of this year, which kind of feels like a lifetime ago. This is my beautiful friend Nick Davidson, who has done like the majority of my projects with me. I'm a big person of creating small teams that are very diverse in terms of the skill sets, the mindsets of the people. And I typically work with the same people because we trust each other. I know their credibility in what they do, and I know that we always have a unified mission. And so, maybe if Nick's available, we can bring him now to talk about Relief Run, because I think his insights are really impactful on this.
I'm gonna quickly just point over to this slide here first, because I know that's giving away the ghost a little bit, just in case we can't get back to it. Let's try and get Nick into the picture. So hold on, this is going to be fun.
I've never done 4 people on the couch.
Yes, 4 people on the couch. Where's it going to put us? This is going to be interesting.
Oh my gosh, I have so many thoughts on that, Sam.
Why don't you riff on some thoughts whilst I'm doing this, Lauren?
I think, Sam, that knowing yourself and then activating the purpose is really important. It's amazing because there's so many parallels that I didn't realize. And then I'm like, so many people are kind of probably on this trajectory where you start out on one thing and then you have that next best plan, and you do just have to succumb to the moment, and you do just have to have that element of trust. And so many things resonated. And I'm just so grateful for you to share that story. And I think we have a 4th person.
I think we have a 4th person. Hold on. We're going to try and drag him in. Nikki, boy.
Are you at the car wash, Nikki?
Oh.
I'm not in the car wash. Car washes are closed, Sam.
Oh, yeah.
In the car wash. Woo.
But I am in the car now. I've managed to. I've got to go and pick up a new computer, and it was just. I'm sitting in my car waiting for your call.
Oh, sorry, mate. Sorry.
That's your outing for the day, Nick. Collecting a computer.
Oh, we don't want to ruin his 1 hour out.
Nice.
I've got the joys of being essential services, so I get to go for drives.
Oh, way to rub it in, mate.
Well, what do you mean? You guys, you're in Sydney, aren't you?
Yeah, we're not complaining.
Not to us. I mean, to other people in Victoria. We're all good. I'm just giving you a handle. Sorry, I hadn't had this prepared because I didn't know where I was going to put you. So
you didn't know how you're going to pop in. Hi, Nick. I'm Lauren. We haven't met.
How are you, Lauren? Lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you. We were just going to jump in on the relief run, and I'm a person that's has been motivated by purpose for quite some time. I drove into the environmental movement and sustainability and kind of worked from a corporate standpoint, but I hit a barrier when I kind of didn't know myself enough. Like, I had been defined by other people, and then I went to adventure. And we just heard Sam share this amazing story that was, she went to adventure, figured herself out, and then really has dove into purpose. And I was saying that 2 things that Sam has done: yes, she's an amazing runner, blah, 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 but the way she's handled motherhood, and the fact that, you collectively raised $1 million by really aligning purpose to, a passion of yours, is all time for me. And I was cheering you guys on from the sidelines when you were running Relief Run. So hands off, would love to hear more about how that mission and project came together from both of you.
Look, I'm primarily motivated by that Sammy yelling at me saying, we have to do this. We need to... Whether it be this or whether it be getting me on a plane, flying to India to do something, or doing all this type of stuff, crossing the Simpson Desert with her. She motivates me to do things. I've done a lot of charity stuff in my time with digital, but this one here was, the motivation was a little pocket rocket.
Why was it so special? Why was this one different for both of you, if I could ask that?
Well, I'll say it's different. I mean, okay, so obviously the results it went viral, and we raised a shitload of money for something that was really important. And I think, but if you put all that aside, what was special for me is, like, very rarely in your life do you work with people who are just willing to put everything aside to make something as successful as it needs to be. And so the idea was a small idea. It grew incredibly quickly. It went viral. But like Nick and I, and then we got our friend Ange on board, and then Nick's wife, Sarah, also my best friend, came on board. And we were like a hub of 4 people who I can't believe how much we worked and how much we were in communication and how much we just did our job. We each had a role, and that's why Nick and I are so good in partnership, because we have very, very different skill sets and we trust each other. Like when it comes to digital and creativity and implementation, Nick can do it better than anyone else. Like I'm an ideas person, but I can't do any of that stuff. And so like I always feel like often I get the credit for a lot of these projects, and like this project, I really wanted to make it very clear that it was the partnership of the 2 of us that made this idea what it was, because otherwise it'd just be me going, let's do a virtual run, and it wouldn't have meant anything like without the website and Nick changing the website every 10 minutes because Nick can talk about the technical sides of things, but that platform crashed so many times and we had to evolve it based on what everyone kept wanting. Like we only were going to do a half marathon and people were like, but I want to do a 5K or I want to do a 7K or I want to like random stuff. And that was the power that we just gave it everything for 12 days.
Yeah, it was pretty mental. I mean, we were hoping for 10 grand. It was crazy what it ended up being. And it's not just that. I mean, it's the case of the volume of entries. The volume of entries is what really made it difficult to manage. I mean, from an infrastructure perspective, whipping something together in Sam's a classic. I've gone, when do you need this by? Like, when do you want to do it? Oh, no rush.
Yesterday.
No rush. Like, we'll launch it like midweek next week. I'm like, oh, it's a bit of a rush, but anyway, okay, we'll build a platform. It's Saturday night. Sunday morning, she's just gone, hey, I reckon we'll be able to have like a landing page or something up this afternoon. And Sunday afternoon, like, yeah, sure. Then she's like, hey, can we get the whole thing working by like 7 o'clock so I can post? So we built an entire platform in about 6 hours to get up. We put it up live, and then we woke up in the morning and we had like, was it like
$15,000?
$15,000 worth of orders, and we're like, what's going on here? And then we just had to like just keep beefing up the infrastructure, adding different staff. And I think it ended up being like almost 20,000 people entered the event from around the world.
From 96 countries on every continent on the planet.
Seriously, unbelievable. Like I remember watching that sort of like just cascade, and just like I was like, this is it. This you guys have cracked. This is what people should be using their talents and skills for, to this kind of change and this kind of good. And like, yeah, 20,000 people, 1.1 something million dollars. Like it was insane.
Well, and you guys ignited a fire in someone, in many people, obviously, where it's like, I care about this and I want to direct my energy, and I might only have a spark and I wasn't sure where to throw that. Probably not a good analogy for the fires
really
that we were faced in. But, people felt really overwhelmed. And I mean, that's no different than kind of how the whole world is feeling now. And it's like, but I don't know what to do. And I remember we had just had Dylan, our baby, and we signed up. And I was like, I can't even like jump without peeing my pants, but I will walk my pram because I want to do something, because I feel like a tits on a bull right now. I can't be out there helping because I'm, at home with a baby, and it gave me a chance to link into that.
I think Sam mentioned something in an interview once, and it was kind of resonated, where people want to feel like they're doing something for it too. It's not a case of anyone can donate 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks, but actually going out there and like hurting. I mean, running 5K, 10K, half marathon for Sam doesn't hurt. It's like me having breakfast, but it's
let me tell you, it hurts after you have a baby.
It hurts for me. I mean, I don't quite have the same tank as you guys have.
I love it. You guys are just way too humble. Nick's like a weapon of an athlete.
So we should just pause there. I mean, and Nick, you were state 400 meter hurdle champion, weren't you, at one point in time?
Yeah. National for a bit and run for Australia for
there we go.
a while. Hurdles is very different to running ultras and halves and all that type of stuff. I've just got no tank. So I'm good for the first 400. If you put stuff in front of me, I'll jump over it. But after that, on anyone's.
I guess that's why Sam, like, you do what you do. Then you're giving him a 400-meter runway. It's just like, can we have the launch pad, just a splash page? Can we have the whole website? It's just 400 meters at a time. That's all you need.
That's right.
Well, it's not that it's because it was an evolving idea. Like, so when I said to Nick, like, middle of the week, like, that's all I was thinking. But things moved quickly, and I did put a little post out, and I just saw the appetite, and I was like, my gut told me this is going to take off if we go now. And Nick felt it too. So, like, Nick's not the kind of person that's just going to jump on something that quickly. He's got a busy work demand that we both just felt we have to capitalize on this moment. People want something. Let's give them something to be a part of.
Yeah, no. Well, what are you gonna? You've got this platform now. You've created it. You've got this database of people. How are you going to use this in the future? What are you guys going to do? Surely you're thinking something.
Well, I think people are I think it did play a role in the virtual events that obviously came to life throughout COVID. I think our platform of the Relief Run may have influenced a couple of event organisers to do it. But I think the last thing that people want to see right now is another virtual event. But, Nick and I are always, we do have a database. We've got a lot of people who connected. The reality was most people won't even know that Relief Run was Nick and myself. Like, obviously you guys do because you know us. But what was so successful about this is people who are on the other side of the planet who don't even know who we are found it because someone in their community heard about it from someone else and everyone got to be a leader. So this is the thing with purpose and making it successful. If you can make it removed from you, it's always going to be better. If you are the center point for all of the purposeful change, you're in big trouble because none of us here are mass influencers. We're not celebrities, and therefore your reach is only going to go so far. But if you can connect it to something that lets the ripple effect of other people taking an ownership and a lead in it, that is going to what makes it kind of go much further.
Yeah.
So
it
true.
was infrastructure. I mean, one of our very close friends runs an event company, and they run, I think, 100 runs between 5K and half marathon a year across the UK. And infrastructurally, this here had no costs. It had zero costs. Oh, well, I think maybe it had a few stripe fees towards the end, but besides that, there were really no costs. So it was so much impact there. Whereas if you're trying to sit there and organise a normal run, you've got road closures, you've got physical medallions, you've got even printing the bibs, the timing, all that type of stuff. It's so much logistics and stuff. And I think this was just the right place, right time. A lot of people that were targeting hadn't done these virtual runs before. There was a lot of seasoned pros that will run every day, but there was so many people that couldn't run. They were like, can we walk the 5K? And I'm like, do whatever you want. Like, it doesn't.
It was about, I guess it was a moment in time where people actually cared more about the why they were doing it than their own personal experience in it. And so therefore, like, I just think it opened up the market to people who wanted to try it. And we never expected that. Like, we thought it was going to be my audience, half marathon distance, and then very quickly, and this is if we weren't agile and willing to pivot and have Nick's capabilities of making quick changes on the digital platform side of things, we wouldn't have been able to capture the appetite of so many people.
I mean, your company's called Bushy Creative, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we've built some very big platforms before, but generally when we build them, we're building them with knowing at the beginning that it's going to be big. And that was the difference here. We were sitting there just going, well, the traffic was insane. There was traffic from like 90 countries.
I mean, that's what we were working like 24/7 because we were responding to like people all around the world. So it was like, and you think 20,000 people sign up, you're always going to get at least 1 to 2% of registered participants who want to ask a question, good, bad, and ugly. And like, I mean, we didn't plan on being an an event service provider. We just thought we were doing something for good, but Nick and I, it's very important for whatever we do to be professional. And so therefore we realised we had a responsibility to respond. And it was overwhelming, but you can do anything for 12 days if you really believe in what you're doing.
What was harder, that or running across India?
Oh, so different. I mean, I think we slept less in the 12 days of relief run, but it was nice to have our own beds to go back to, and we had a bit more security around us.
I reckon that 10K run I did with you crossing India when you spoke to me, that was probably tougher than this for me.
And this is such a funny story because Nick's, like, whenever he's joined me for the runs, he's always joined me when I'm really, like, exhausted and destroyed. So he's always so much faster than me. But I got stronger. This is where I can say that you do get stronger through exposure to hardship. And so Nick came like 3/4 of the way into it. I was highly tuned to like humidity and running on the road for 10 to 12 hours a day. And so like Nick comes and he looks all great and he's got his shirt off and I'm like, mate, this is India. Put your shirt back on. Then I just realised, oh my goodness, I'm stronger than I thought I was. And so I was like, I want to see Nick hurt. I've never been able to see him hurt. And so I just went out. I just kept going faster and faster. And we were doing like sub 4-minute Ks. And Nick finished that 10K section with me. And it was, I think I got stronger by seeing him die.
I almost passed out because I'm so used to coming along, and I'm over 6 foot and Sam's 4'2", and so one of the steps is 3 of hers. So usually, if she's running at 6.5 Ks because she's running 150 Ks in a day, I can shuffle along next to her and I'm okay. There was no shuffling here. I was flat out as far like, and I was in all sorts.
It's so good. I loved it. Loved it.
A very different dynamic to running across the Simpson Desert.
Yeah.
Oh, I think you should have just put some hurdles in the way as well. I mean, I think the height advantage would have been an interesting one.
You just go under them.
I go under them. But this is like the evolution, like in terms of like good teams. Like Nicky's been there from the beginning, like not from the 4 deserts, but literally from like that next year in 2011. And so like we've had like 9 years doing expeditions in different parts of the world from the logistical preparation and conceiving the idea into something that can be globally, viewed to the actual physical undertaking. So like there's no one in my life that's seen every facet of it like Nick has. And therefore he's seen me when I'm strong and not.
Like traveling the highest motorable pass in the world with you to the Varanasi and then bringing your 7-month-old baby across 4 international flights sitting on my knee. That was another quite a...
Wow.
That's the real expedition
friendship.
right there.
That's friendship right there.
That was probably harder, though he was a champ. Like when the 3 of us went to India together, and like the funny thing is Nick and I don't know how to, even when we've had money, we never choose like luxury, even when we can afford it, we always choose, maybe I do, I always choose to make us like do it tough, like let's choose the cheapest accommodation even with a baby.
I'm not going to lie though, after we finished in when I left you guys in India, I got to the airport and the first thing I did was walked up to the counter and gone, I want all of my next flights upgraded, and just paid and upgraded to business class because I wanted to get out of India, nice, relaxed. Yeah, so that was I didn't slum at that time.
Yeah.
We did live in a camper van for the month that I lived there for 77 days and Nick did it for 30 days. And, when you are crewing a project, and Nick can speak to this more, you almost don't get to feel your own discomfort because you're attunely aware that the person that you're there supporting is probably feeling at another level. But because of that, I think there's a lack of self-care, which is I've tried to be better at empowering my team to self-care, because if they're not looking after themselves, there's no way they can look after me. And that's been, again, an evolution of my understanding of like being a crew, being the runner, how can they both come together to be in unison? But yeah, it's very tough being the support for these projects.
It's also, you've got to understand the person. I mean, I think every person is different. I understand Sammy pretty well, and we can, we're both pretty strong personalities, and the whole time we're in India, we had one little tiff, you know what I mean? And that's inevitable on an expedition like that. But I mean, it's when you understand the person, it's like Sam knows. I think we'll run for an hour and a half and won't say anything to each other. Or I'll run for an hour and a half and I know she wants me to talk, and I'll be talking about how that building's built, all this type of random shit, and I know that she just wants something to distract her while she's running because she's hurting. So
what about the time that I had an ant in an interesting place, Nick?
Yeah, exactly. That was in the middle of the Simpson Desert, wasn't it?
Yeah. I had an ant in my vagina.
Oh, wow.
I was wondering if it was down the bra or down the pants.
Okay, so play this story out.
This situation, I was just it wasn't in my handbook on how to be a successful crew member is insects in that department. So
we should put that in the final chapter of the book. How to deal with vaginal ants.
Hey, well, it's good that you're such close friends. I mean,
I didn't make him get it out. I just shared the story with him. I was like, "Oh, Nick, guess where I've got an ant? Not just in my pants."
it's
like Laka.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm actually floored. I don't know what to say. That's yeah. I guess that goes to what your mum once said about the outback. She was worried about we'd have to bring a something
chair to sit on,
a chair to sit down because it's like
spiders will crawl up your
vagina. And
that was my mom's biggest concern about us going to the outback was what about the spiders in your vagina? You better bring like a seat.
I mean, it's a concern, but it's a very specific concern.
It was a very specific concern. But, she's American, so all she's heard is there's lots of spiders and they're everywhere. She's not wrong. But that wasn't our top concern. But it's funny hearing you guys and how you dealt with the team and then people that crew. I mean, we almost felt that way between us in the outback. There was days that we were like, we could not talk to each other. We just needed quiet. And then there's other days that we were just talking other bullshit because we were both in it. But then reality is we were crewing for our daughter because she was the least, we always put ourselves last because she was a 1-year-old in the outback and she didn't choose it. So we were doing it for her. And we had to work on self-care, but we actually didn't get there till halfway through the expedition, which was 6 weeks in.
Yeah, it's funny to crew for someone that doesn't know you're crewing.
I'm great. They just want snacks. Yeah, they want snacks every 5 minutes. And
adventures too. At some points in time, you didn't even know where you were.
So was it but this is I reckon there'll be people who'll listen to this, the Jonesies, and they've either done adventures like this and they can totally relate, or they're people who are maybe excited to kind of create their own. And I'm sure lockdown, on whatever level people have experienced, has made people think, okay, I want to be more adventurous when I have the opportunity. And I would just say, choosing your team is probably the most important decision that you will make. And I've made some great decisions, i.e. Nick, and I've made some not so great decisions. And the reality is, it's easy to kind of look at the person and going, you weren't right for this role, you didn't do what I thought you would do. And it's nearly always down to you if you've made a mistake that you haven't trained and equipped and prepared them for that undertaking, because I'm the one that's done this stuff enough times now to know that when people are put out of their comfort and into their discomfort, they operate differently than they do in normal day life. And people who haven't been exposed to it aren't prepared for the highs and lows that it might take them.
Yeah. And as a crew member, you've got to remember, you've got to take your ego out of it completely. Yeah. It's not about it's not about you at all, and that's quite difficult for people sometimes, especially I'd say someone I think you would have learned it, Sam, being the centre of all of your runs and then crewing for someone, and it's that shift is I've always been the boss. Of every business I've ever had, I've always been in charge. So when I go there, I'm just you just got to go, it's not about me, it's not about me, it's all about that person.
Which it goes back to the theme of today, which is that grit and purpose. And what we were just saying with purpose is, it's taking it to that next point where, your relief run wasn't about you guys. It was about, saving the planet in this weird position we come on, which to me, I think spoke so highly because working in sustainability, I do feel like we're facing Like, this is not a freak thing. I think this is our new normal, and that terrifies me. And I don't think we have 50 years to figure it out. I think we have 10 or 15. And as a mother, that terrifies me. So figuring out how to direct that passion and that impact aligned with purpose, I think is really powerful. And you guys really captivated that moment and made it something bigger than yourselves, which is really important.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Can I just say, Nick, do you have a story or anecdote or question you want to throw to Sam whilst you can put it on the hot seat right now? Something that, yeah, you want to just chuck out there? She's worried already. Jeez, I love this.
I feel sweaty.
Turn that heater off then, mate.
I put it back
Your
on.
heater's back on, yeah.
Sorry, I was cold.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, I'm sweating in the car here right now, but I can't turn the air conditioner on.
So Nick's trying to get any permission to take his shirt off, I know.
Actually, if anyone wants, check
it's-
out his handle, Nicky Boy, down below, because, I mean, like, I'll tell you what.
Are you jealous, Justin?
Yeah, I am a bit jealous. I mean, like, Nicky, sorry, Nicky. Nick, I shouldn't call you Nicky. Heritage-wise, you're Eurasian as well, aren't you?
Yeah,
I'm like, why didn't we all get built the same way? I mean, I just don't have the rig that you've got. Like, it's just like, what's going on? What's going on?
He didn't always look like that. He's like worked for it, so maybe you could do the same thing.
Yeah,
Well, the expedition, I was 60 kilos.
oh, yeah, that's
Can I actually ask that question? There is a question that we always ask. What can people, and maybe while we have both of you on, I'm asking for a friend, considering I've just had a second baby and running, seems almost impossible, and building your body back up from nothing, whether that's an injury or, a birth or whatever. Can you give people a tip on starting this week? So Sam, you were like, people are in lockdown and this has inspired them to do adventures. And like, I'm not adventurous and I have done adventurous things. So anybody can do this. What's your advice to people kind of starting from that ground zero point? And any tip or 2 tips that they can do this week would be really helpful.
So I'll speak about it from the lens of coming back after having a baby, and then Nick can do it coming back from injury, because that's something we're both experiencing.
Yeah.
I guess from the motherhood thing is acknowledging that your body is very different, and everyone has a different. Everyone does it in a different way. So I felt like I took a bit longer to kind of come back than kind of some other ultra athletes. And you can't help but compare yourself to people who you think that you're similar to and think that your trajectory has to be similar. So I think removing a comparison can be very helpful, even though it's hard to do. And I think sometimes testing the waters and then acknowledging when it just doesn't feel right. So I remember doing a half marathon, when Harry was like 3 or 4 months old, and I felt like I was about to fall apart.
I remember we talked about it, and you were like, it feels so different. I don't know how. And I mean, running not defines you, but running's your thing. So to lose that must have been quite.
And then that's where the opening of going, I actually am really happy to not just be defined by a runner. I'm happy to be defined by like just someone who likes the outdoors. And so I don't actually care how I am outdoors, just as long as I'm outdoors. So, for mothers, I'd say like walking is your best friend. And if you are carrying your child or walking, know that you're doing an insane strength workout. And so like mothers are truly some of the strongest people because they're doing more than they even realize. Like you're actually training all the time and you don't even consider it training. And so I'd say take the confidence of that, knowing that you've actually built up quite a strength within you. And when you feel right to get back to a training program or exercise or taking on an adventure, you are more prepared for it than you know.
Physically as well,
Really
mum's strength is crazy. I mean, you see it also in the birth process. You see it on a day-to-day basis, but also just like on a minute level. Right arms, generally of mothers, the strongest things in the world. They can hold a child like you wouldn't believe. It's just, and they don't look massive. They're just epic.
They don't look massive, but they're good.
Yeah, exactly.
Very happy at the airport when you're 7 months old. I got to the other end. I'm like, got lactic acid. I'm off balance. My hips. And Sam's 4 foot nothing, and she's just like spinning him on the little finger and just swapping arms and stuff like that. I was just like, I'll carry the bag.
Mum strength.
I'll carry the bags. You carry the baby. Okay, Nick, anything that you have found helpful when you're kind of starting from scratch or restarting from scratch?
My thing's consistency. I mean, if you just say you want to sit, like even if you go and stretch for half an hour a day, and then you change that into, okay, I'm going to do a workout for 2 hours a day and stretch for 2 days, and then stretch for 3 days. It's all about teaching your body, okay, this is the time I'm going to go and do things. With learning to run for longer distances, they call it a time on feet run, where I'd go out there and I'd shuffle at like 8-minute K pace for an hour. Then the next time I'd go a little bit faster, but teaching my body to be out running and exercising for an hour. And I think I've been talking to a lot of clients and a lot of people about that recently in COVID with regards to work. They're not working, so they're just like got no purpose and they're not doing anything. I might just learn something. There's lynda.com. Like, go and teach yourself how to build a website. Or don't build a website, I'll do that for you. But like use Photoshop or all this type of stuff. Just learn how to. It's 30 days free and it costs next to nothing. And just use that time you would be working into, like, just keep consistency of everything going, and then life's so much easier to move forward from. I think that's the best thing I could give.
That's so important. And also, Sam, that goes into what you were saying earlier, if I can find my notes. Oh God, I had a really good thought, but you're like, Nick, you were saying people have lost their purpose because they don't have work. Well, this is the perfect opportunity to actually say, was that actually truly my purpose? And if not, here's your time to actually figure it out, I think is what you're saying. And if we can all light up, I think the world needs us to know our purpose. This is a great opportunity when we have to slow down.
And I think there's a few things with that. Your purpose can be multifaceted.
Yeah.
Your purpose can change. And I think there's a really interesting time right now where we are moving away from I to we. And I think, like, for example, as adventurers, Jonesy, I feel like just saying, in the last decade, I'm doing this amazing feat of endurance, corporate sponsor, come and back me. They might say yes, because it was a huge, amazing feat of endurance. I would be really surprised now if corporates get behind an adventurer who can't speak to the we, to the masses. And I'm actually excited by that, because, like, if you just want to do something for yourself, well, then put your skin in the game and back it yourself.
Yeah. I agree. And that's me being in corporate. I ran the corporate social responsibility. And I think the evolution that businesses are more than just, being the best in the world to being the best for the world, that they do have a power, that they can wield in a purposeful way, I think is the new greatness of business in my own experience.
One of my businesses is a skincare company, and
you own a skincare company.
Yeah. Oh. And it talked about sustainability and clean beauty and stuff, and it's one of those things where it's going to be the new normal. We can't have a business anymore without sustainability. You can't have it as you can't start a business if you use plastic. We don't, everything's recycled, like, and it made from, like, tubes have to be made from, like, recycled sawdust and stuff like that. It's not like, and it's not the thing like 5 years ago where you talk about this is what we're doing. It's what you have to do now. You have to do it. I mean, even look at what Nike and Adidas are doing with recycled plastics and no more single uses and stuff like that. And I think it comes back to it as well. It's a case of they can't just do what's right for them as a business. They have to do what's right for the whole world now. So, I mean, to the point where it's scary about where the direction the world's heading. Yeah, that's a really good point, and it's scary, but it's also pretty positive how everyone is rallying around it. I mean, if you look at the changes made in the last 3 years, in whether it's enough, I'm not disputing that, but it is pretty exciting to see some of these people that were all about money actually making some changes.
100%. There's a huge opportunity, both from a personal standpoint and from a collective standpoint, to actually have our lives be driven by something that matters more than ourselves. And I think that's really exciting.
I've got to admit, like, I'm going to say I'm a bit of a selfish adventurer. Like, the stuff that I've done in the past, yes, there's been a cause to it, but to be honest, like, it's to do the adventure first, and then the cause, well, I've got this platform, so I'm going to use it for XYZ. So that's been my take on it for years. And, like, I've watched, Sam, your evolution and the way that you've gone about it, and Relief Run and whatnot, and I've been like, wow, no, I watch it so closely, because like that's the perfect intersection of how you've got to join adventure with purpose. And I think you should almost be bloody teaching workshops on that and talking about making an idea actually go from a dream into a reality. You two are the dream team. You really are. Like, it was phenomenal. Like 12 days of madness.
She's the dreamer.
Yeah, I couldn't. As I said, like, I have the idea, and then Nick kind of like workshops the idea into reality, to be perfectly honest, which is why it works so well.
Yeah.
But I would also say, I think there's nothing wrong with doing feats of adventure and endurance for yourself. It's kind of like what I said before, Jonesy. Like, these are what tests you, and you might show purpose in something else in your life because of the experiences that you had in that world. So I'm not saying everything has to be fueled with purpose, but I would also say that people don't understand the reality of how hard it is to do purpose-driven expeditions, and that you have to kind of ask yourself a very valid question at the beginning, which is, okay, what are my goals for this project? Because I can tell you on a weekly basis, I get sent an email from someone who wants to do a run, and they want to raise, and they always say, I want to raise $1 million. Every single person always says $1 million. And so I never want to poo-poo anyone's idea, but I do say to them, how much time do you plan to dedicate to the fundraising component of it? What's your prior experience with fundraising? Because you can use those two metrics and numbers to then determine maybe a more tangible, realistic goal. And then you're setting yourself up for success, that if you surpass it, you can create a new goal.
Did anyone else just see and hear Dr. Evil?
What?
I heard it.
$1 million.
Million.
It just came into my mind. So it's funny. That's the stock standard.
But they all do. I'm just like, I love the excitement, and that's where the naivety comes in, and maybe also the ego of it. But like, people aren't asking themselves true questions, and then they're going to corporate partners going, I'm going to raise $1 million, sponsor me, when really, like, they probably aren't willing to do the work of what it takes to raise $1 million.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to that deeper why too.
$1 million is the money. I mean, it is a lot of money. If you think about this, there's 20,000 people raised $1 million for us.
I know, it's crazy.
Like, it's a lot of money.
It's it is a lot of money, but you guys showed with the right purpose, right passion, you guys can do it. I mean, you can activate a group of people, you can make things happen, and I know you guys have learnt from that for future things.
Yeah, and it's lighting those 20,000 sparks is the real power.
No, that's the thing. For me, it was the awareness as well that's important. I mean, you look at Sammy's adventure when she ran across India. It didn't raise anywhere near the money, but it actually empowered and engaged and educated people on situations that they probably didn't want to think about. This here was the impact with regards to the bushfires was more about actually what the dollars and cents could do rather than what the knowledge of the cause is about. So $1 million might be... There's far more things that you can do a charity event for rather than just making money. I mean,
set awareness.
I mean, BHP can give the money away; they've got enough of it. But you want to educate the masses instead. If we could touch 1 million people, that sounded bad. If we could,
you'd be in jail for a long, long time.
If I could touch one person right now, besides my husband, I'd get where's my
Does he know that?
We're not allowed to touch people. We're not allowed to see people.
I miss the hug. I really miss a hug. I miss that.
The next hug I'm going to do, I'm going to hold the back of the head as well.
Jonesy, like that photo that's like from the end of my presentation where I saw that and I was holding the girl's hands when I was finishing. I was like, oh my God, you can't do that now. Like that moment kind of got to me going, oh my goodness, I couldn't, one, be in India. I, two, couldn't like be even in like that proximity, and I couldn't hold those girls' hands. That kind of got to me a little bit.
Which I think that you had said earlier, Sam, a huge driver for you is this community and this human kind of part. And so to have that stripped away physically, it even makes this other work that, this other purposeful work going even more important.
Well, it makes the emphasis on digital very important. Like someone like Nikki's never been as important, because if you can't get your message out through a digital platform right now,
it's not getting out.
It's not getting out. And so a lot of people are having to reinvent themselves in that respect because there's not the same vehicle that there used to be.
Yeah.
100%.
I'm a little conscious of timing here, so
he only has an hour.
Because you're in the car for a while, the cops might rock up and you'll have an awkward conversation recorded. But I just wanted to say, Nick, thank you. But also the Relief Run, people should check it out. The website's still up and live. It's reliefrun.com.au, or is it just .com?
Just.com.
Just.com. And how do people get in contact with you, Nick, if they see something they really love and they just have to have you work on a project for them?
Part of their team.
Just hit me up on Instagram if you want, or they can visit the website, but more than happy to check me out and ask questions.
Or to get your skincare line, or to see you topless. Is that the same channel?
Yeah. Skincare, bloom effects, but everything seems to be Instagram nowadays.
Okay, well, I'll put this in the show notes. So I'll put Bushy Creative and Bloom Effects down in the show notes, also with your Instagram handle. It's at NickyBoy. Great photos of you and your dog. I love it. But last question for you, Nick, before you run, because I want to ask this to Sam. When they make the Sam Gash movie of her life, who do you want to play you?
Oh, it's got to be Keanu, doesn't it?
Oh, that's awesome. Legitimately awesome.
You guys do have similar hair.
That's a really good one.
Who would play me, Nick?
Danny DeVito? Is he?
Man, you're meanie.
No one could play you, Sammy. You'd have to do it. What's the point of doing your arts degree if it were drama and it wasn't for? Or you're creating your life just so you can play yourself in your body.
That is such. I never even thought about that, and that's going to be my answer from now on when I get asked that question.
Okay, excellent. I'm glad we could have helped.
Thanks, Nick.
All right, Nick, thank you so much. Sam, stay on. Nick, I'll give you a hoy afterwards.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Nice. Good to see you all. Bye.
All right, bye. Wow, that's so much fun.
What time are we at? Because I know Sam. Do we have any questions?
We've gone long. We do have a couple of questions that people have asked.
Do you want me to
online.
do a quick wrap up?
You do a quick wrap up, and then I'll ask a couple of questions.
So we always try to do this to summarize some of your amazing nuggets of wisdom. Which Sam, I'm on 3 pages plus, so I will try to be quick. But your evolution seemed to start when you said yes more. You started to, and that you didn't know the end outcome, but you just started yes and taking those new opportunities that led to kind of this cascading effect. So I think, your yes mission, I think, was a really interesting way if people are looking to start. You also mentioned that there's nothing remarkable about the wall. It just is a thing, and you have to know that there's a chunky phase that kind of, is around that wall. And if you can wade through the chunky, you can kind of cross that uncomfortable to the new possible, which I think was really interesting. And everyone's talking about resilience. I think we need to, you had a vision that, yes, it's an important topic, but let's talk about not how do we get it, but why we've lost it and where we've lost it along the way. I think is a really nice flip. I think that it is that you want to, you're never going to know what you like or what you're capable of until you try it. So there's a huge power in the evolution of growth. And I wish I let myself be happier. Just kind of follow the thing that lights you up, I think is really important, because I get stressed when people say, find your passion. And if you don't know what your passion is, you feel like you've lost it. Well, just be happy and find your happy place, or find the things that made you happy as a kid before you were predispositioned is a really good place to start. How do I use this opportunity and use my footsteps to actually have a meeting beyond myself? So from a me to we, I think is really beautiful. Where do we go when we are in this phase of lockdown? Some of your key things that you and your family do are go back to fundamentals. So what do I really need? Like really need bare bones, and what can I remove? And how, what can we do with the new time we have when we're grounded? I think was a really powerful thing. And if we can align passion and purpose into that, even better. Still going, and these are very important.
Can I get a copy of these after?
Sure. This is
a keynote on this.
I know. Well, this is coming. So relentless forward motion was another nugget. detach from the perfect picture. So keep moving forward, plan by all means, but when you're doing something beyond your comfort zone or beyond what has been done in the past or what you have done in the past, you have to keep moving forward and detach from perfection. Elevate your mission and purpose, which is that me to we. Inward to outward is another really beautiful way that you talk about that. I think a power is know yourself first. I went to my purpose and passion and I got burnt out because I didn't know my own skill sets and I needed to figure myself out. So I kind of went the other way, but I think two parts of that coin are really important. Know what you care about and what you want to protect and what you love, and also know about yourself. So dive into yourself first, because you can't fix other people and you can't solve anything if you don't know who you are. You don't need to know what actions follow, just do something meaningful. And the quote that you used was, be willing to create the next best plan. And I love that. So plan as much as you can, but then succumb. Then we diverted to teams. So choose your team has been, a big portion of the advice, and small, diverse teams and teams that you trust and are unified by a mission are the key things that seem to have worked for you. And given that you and Nick have worked together for 10 plus years, it seems like you pick teams really well. So I think that is really good advice. And then power of an evolving idea and the power of pivot. So just get the idea started and then be open to pivot. And I think that's what adventure thinking is all about. That's what design thinking, is about in business, where you're all about trying something, not having it perfect, and then pivoting. So I think there's a lot of power in that. Also knowing your timing. Elevate the we to create something that people want to be a part of that's beyond you. And remove it from you entirely is kind of the elevated Maslow's hierarchy. If you can get to that point and elevate it beyond you.
It's like Buddha level enlightenment right there. It's like you're no longer doing anything.
Yeah, then you're just elevating up into the air and your whole entire existence is blissful. Yeah, right. But those are really good points. Also, remove comparison. Thank you, Sam. We will do that this week because I totally agree. Even for my second baby, I thought, I had gotten back after the first, and the second feels very different. I put on another 25 kilos. My body, it was not in that place, and it feels like I'm starting from scratch. So it's a good reminder for me. Go with what feels right, I think is really important. And then Nick's point of consistency. Yeah. So, wow.
Yeah, that's epic. Like, seriously, this is why I should pay her the big bucks, but I don't.
I work for free.
She did a really good job. I want a copy of that. Take it.
They're just my, and I have chicken scratch for writing, so you would not want to see it. But thank you. Those were all powerful. And the evolution of this is that we're going to start creating, we're going to start pulling these together, because the funny thing is that we've talked to such different people, whether they're from where they're from, age, race, color, whether they're women or men, yet the themes are kind of similar in how each of these people handle kind of challenge. And that's been really important during this time, I think. So Sam, thank you so much for giving us your time. Does she have questions that are coming in?
There are a couple of questions. So I just wanted to ask you them, if that's all right. I mean, one that's the stock standard one is like when things come back from, because we haven't even touched on it really. People have known you also that you were part of the world's toughest race. That whole little thing that you didn't get enough airtime of.
Justin's really upset about this on your behalf.
I'm upset about that on your behalf.
Take
But
note.
are you? People have been asking, are you going back for round 2 on that?
Well, we've applied, but we have I think thousands of other teams. So we are in the mix, I presume, with all the other teams that applied. I think we find out in a couple of weeks. But there's a lot of unknown with that, meaning is it going to be in February or March, or is it going to be November, or is it maybe going to be 2022? So we've gone in with a slightly different team just based on availability, and
Justin's like, oh, please pick me. He is.
So we really want to, because it was such a great experience, and it wasn't for us about the TV. Like, we actually already got the experience, and I'd say for anyone who is excited about it because they're watching it, know that you want to do it even if no one's watching, and that's a really good test because because it's a lot of work to get to the start line. It's a lot of commitment.
Yeah,
That's a good advice for life too.
100%. You know, I was watching. I was going like, oh my gosh, that looks so much fun.
Yeah, he just
Like, it's
this is me,
just-
not me. This is where he's like, that looks awesome, and I'm like, we are so different in that way.
Yeah, it's just. I
He
mean,
just
what
loves it for the pure.
Yeah, and what people don't realize, particularly because I did it with my husband, like the 6-7 months leading into it was really, really hard. Both of us kind of committing to our training and raising, you know, a 1-year-old at the time, and like the logistics are very complicated, and having careers too. So that doesn't get attention to when you watch, you know, people, we've almost glamorized suffering when we watch it on TV. But I would say the reality of it is it's definitely harder. It's not glamorous in the slightest.
Yeah, it doesn't look that glamorous.
But getting to the starting point as a team, I mean, that's what we do, a lot of these things together, and the juggle to get now both kids. One we were just getting on top of, and then you have another. So that adds another layer.
I mean, I know for this session, that's probably why you got to hustle up. But, you know, even just I know how much work it takes for me to get my podcast out, and for the two of you to kind of do what is a live session with video and get the kids out of the door. Like it's very, very challenging. And so my, you know, challenge to the two of you is to keep the consistency of this, and to maybe say one a week is a little bit too much, and go, let's commit to every second week. Because we know that we can do that, and it gives certainty to the audience. It doesn't seem so overwhelming in what we're trying to do, and also like they're lengthy pieces, so they take time obviously for people to listen to, and there's so much content out these days, and the messages from these are evergreen, so people will always go to it. I think a fortnightly objective is actually a really good one to maybe consider.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we've been thinking about is like actually whether to take the pressure off it being live, because that does cause a bit of chaos, and like things do happen.
Because then if anything comes up at 12 p.m. on a Wednesday, whether for the guest or us, then you have to reschedule, which is tough, versus you could do a backlog. Because we're really enjoying, our big success factor for us is how we feel. You know, do we feel lighter or heavier after each of these conversations? And each time we kind of have this like, we're feeling vibey from them. So
vibey. Amazing lessons are coming out. I mean, there's some crackers. I love this conversation with you. I've loved the conversation with Michelle Lee. Like, she's just a ball of energy. Jeff Wilson was just great in terms of practical resilience tips.
And I can't wait to listen to your podcast. I just saw that you had the Spoonful of Sarah with the Find Your Yay. So I actually have it teed up to listen on my next walk in the morning.
Do you know?
I'm excited.
Who she's married to?
Well, I know that through Sam, but so Nick and Sarah are married.
Yeah.
Yes.
I knew Sarah from
But
law
Sarah
school.
seems really cool.
Yeah, she's cooler than Nick.
Did you put them together?
And I feel like I did, because they're equally my friends, in terms of my strength in my relationship is the same with each of them. And you don't often get that in a partnership. But very similar timing, but nothing to do with me. I have set up some of my other friends. I do feel like it's a skill of mine that I don't often get to talk about. I'm quite a good matchmaker.
Okay, so
All you out there who are single in COVID.
Yeah. I'll add
to
it
Sam.
in. You know, that could be another job. I'll be your virtual online matchmaker.
Perfect. But I'm excited to hear you and Sarah's conversation on your podcast, which we'll put a link to in our bio, so that people can check out Sam's podcast, because she's interviewing some really amazing humans. I listen to some of your episodes when I go for a walk in the morning, so I'm excited to listen to your recent one, because I was like, oh, these girls seem like it seems like a great chat from what I saw.
It's fun.
Well, probably should wrap up the next couple of questions faster then. We had one that was sort of in a similar vein, but basically was asking whether you were going to be running across another country. Now, do you want to just talk quickly about the Speed project? Because that's what you were going to be. Is that what's called? Well,
I was going to was going to do the Speed project, which is a non-stop relay from Santa Monica to Vegas, but that was kind of a bit of fun. I was going to be doing I had a great team. I'm definitely loving the team stuff at the moment. But I was meant to be running across the American Discovery Trail right now in the United States. It's a trail that goes all the way across the country from Delaware to San Francisco. It's not really like, it's a part city, part town, part jungle, part everything. I think 10 or 20% of the American population live within 10 miles of the trail, but half people wouldn't even know that they live that close to it. So I was meant to do that, and the concept of it was about how do people feel a sense of belonging when they're so disconnected. Now, this was all designed before COVID, which in many respects the messaging is
more needed.
needed, but I now also believe that even the way that we structure the project should be different, given the fact that we've been asked to consider diversity and inclusion a little bit differently. And so there's something that I'm just contemplating in my projects right now of how do I show up in that space as well. And I feel like I could be better in that. And just to say to yourself, well, I've always worked with the same people. We work really well. Maybe I'm shutting off opportunities by not thinking more broadly, by sticking in my safety net. So I do think that's something that I always think about, but I feel like I'm encouraged to think about it far more deeper now. So again, the whole thing of, I was very excited about doing that, but it just wasn't the right time. And so I don't know if I'll go back to it. We'll see. I've got a few other plans for next year, so we'll see how
that's secret squirrel stuff. I can see. Well, last question from the crowd, then I'll ask, because we are time short. This one comes from Steve. When you want to give up or start to question yourself in the middle of a painful section, what's your method of fighting off that doubt?
It's reminding myself that I chose to be in this situation. And I feel like choice is really powerful, because if you have choice to be there, you have choice to leave. Yeah. And every time I remember that I can leave, I'm like, oh, shit, no, I don't want to leave. And I just think it's kind of remembering, no one's forcing you to do this. You put a lot of work to be in this space, and you know that if you don't just try something different, you're going to really regret it later on. So I've learned to try and keep my mental overwhelm, to drop it, because when the more and more it gets up to here, you stop to remember that you have so many options at your disposal before quitting. So it's about diffusing the intensity in the mind so you can remember, I can walk, I can slow down, I can drink, I can stop for a second. So, yeah, there's no one's telling you how this has got to look.
That's a really, really good bit of advice. I mean, a lot of people, I think it's pretty binary. You're struggling, you stop. It's no. What's your cascade? What's your actions on plan if X, Y, Z happens? Have that, because it allows you to build back up at times. You just need to take a moment for yourself. Sage advice. Okay, final question then. Who would you like to see in the hot seat? Who is another adventure thinker out there that you would like to be sitting on the virtual couch between Lauren and I? In the future?
I'm going to say someone that I know that you want to get on. So then this is the call out to them to come on. Mario Rigby. I think you should get him on. I think he's really awesome. He's just come back from doing a kayak. He's doing a lot of great conversations right now about diversity in the outdoors. And I know you guys have had that theme on, and I just think it should be talked about in multiple different ways, because multiple people of diversity have different perspectives on what diversity looks like.
Yeah, 100%. Brilliant. Awesome. All right, well, I'll have to... I know Mario through you, I guess, and I'll try and reach out to him, but I also know him through the person who's currently actually with our child right now actually knows Mario.
Who?
Fuchsia Sims. Knows Mario. So we'll try and get him on, and then when we do, we'll call you in for a question.
Yes. Love him.
Yes. Okay, so we're going to put in the show notes.
And thank you for being our first purposeful, powerful mama adventure / corporate / dating expert extraordinaire / yes, you're a beautiful human, and thank you for having us. Thank you for coming onto our couch.
Thank you for being candid.
Yeah. Oh, there's no other way to be. I feel, again, if this year's taught us anything, no one needs bullshit anymore. Let's just be real, because we're all going through the same stuff. And so let's take away the demystification of perfection and the way that we think people's lives are, because it's just not true. And I always want to affirm the two of you. It's hard to do this. The live thing is really innovative and real, and I know it's challenging, but it's next level. Anyone can do a podcast where they can have it pre-recorded and make it look perfect. It is bloody hard to make something live, and you're doing a great job.
Yeah, especially when you're producing it by yourself. I mean, we're not.
Yeah. I mean, look around.
We're not Joe Rogan.
You should show. We can't flip the camera.
We can.
We're in our living room, and our living room gets taken over by cameras, and then kids can't crawl around. And this is our one space in a 2-bedroom apartment. So literally, you don't need a ton of space. You just need to keep trying and to take perfection out of it.
Cameras.
It's so good. It's really good, guys. And when you obviously go to Tassie, you've now taught yourself enough that you might not have
from down there.
can do it from anywhere. So hopefully you have good enough internet to do it there.
Yeah, no, we should be. We'll do it from down there, and also what it might mean is we can have just a studio set up, and that is it. And we might have to break it down
And
every
we're trying
single
to
time.
get the consistency more, but we're trying
sorry.
to also be gentle on ourselves when we don't nail it, because that's our reality right now. So
How do people get in contact with you?
Like Nikki Boy, I am most active on Instagram, so at Samantha Gash.
Yep.
I've also got a website, which I'm like Samantha Gash on everything. So like Twitter, Instagram, website. But if you want a response, you're more likely to get one via Instagram.
Okay.
And where do we see your movie? Because we showed a snippet of it, but for the people that want to see more of it, where do we see it? Can we?
It's on Adventure
Reels.
Reels.
Yeah.
It's on Adventure Reels, which just
Which
reminded
is
me.
playing right now, isn't it? Virtually?
Yeah,
I
you
think?
can rent it.
Cool.
Yes, that reminds me. I'm going to do something for Jemima.
Yeah, me too. I'll put that in the show notes as well, or in the links to it, so that you can watch Run India. Sam, this has been so awesome to have you on.
So nice
Really
to chat
appreciate
after
it.
so long, because I haven't.
I feel like I've been out of bean. Like let's do the hug.
I know, a big virtual.
hug. It's creepy and weird. There's a creepy. Oh, we can.
Thanks for thinking. Signing out for today.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're gonna do our jar with our Monday to do. So our Wednesday.
Okay, I'm not going to ask about it because it should be private.
Okay. Well, and can you give your beautiful husband a hug for me?
I will.
And say, I'm actually really interested in the whole bow hunting thing as well. Because
Yeah, well,
He's probably out hunting and gunning.
do you have to come via Melbourne to go to Tassie?
we
Yeah,
do.
but we can't stop.
We can't stop though on the way down. But that's we only petrol stations. That's all we can stop at. Do you have petrol at your place?
Petrol. We actually do. Mark's got it for the generator.
Oh, there we go. Brilliant.
But when the borders open up, please, we are a ferry ride away from Melbourne on the Spirit or a short flight. So our house is open.
Actually,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
a couple of things in Tassie I want to do, so that's perfect.
Yeah,
let's do
perfect.
it.
Come.
Let's talk. Let's dream and scheme.
Let's dream and scheme. Yeah, let's do some fun outdoor stuff and some purpose-driven stuff. I would love to collab with some, how do we protect our beautiful places that we want our kids to come into?
Yes. I'm excited, guys.
Yeah,
Okay.
cool.
Thank you, Samantha Gash. You're amazing.
Okay,
See ya.
bye. Have a good week, guys.
Oh, there's Sam. Just by herself. So that's
She's kicked us off the couch.
all right. So that's I'm all over the place right now.
Oh, you dropped her.
Just yeah. There you go.
now it's
Lauren.
me.
It's just Lauren. How awesome was that?
It's super inspiring. It's very helpful
So many
to know
notes.
that a lot of these skill sets are very helpful in this unexpected adventure that we all find ourselves pivoting on. So I feel a bit like I have some tools in my toolkit to tackle the week. So thank you, Sam. How are you feeling?
Great. I mean, this is what adventure thinking is all about. It's about tapping into the mindset of people who've been right out there in the very hard spots and come back with some amazing knowledge. Yes, hearing it is one thing versus experiencing it, but like when you go through those tough times, you'll have in the back of your mind some of these tips and tricks and thoughts, even just these nice quotes, and be able to potentially rely on it, or it'll come out when you least expect it. So I just want to say, if you've got a thought on who we should have on the show, please send us a message. We've just had a couple of comments there. Sarah Davis just popped in to say, that was awesome.
Hi, Sarah.
Thanks all. Hi, Sarah. How are you?
She was a previous,
And we also had Dahal just give the sort of like the whole... So thank you so much, mate. Next week we've got a really exciting guest, also in lockdown. I think we're tapping into the Victorians. Next week it's going to be Tim Cope. So you might have saw a little picture of that. Let me pull up this one here. It's going to be Tim Cope. Sorry, Lauren, you're hiding behind the thing.
It's fine.
You'll have to pop your head through. It's Tim Cope, who walked across Mongolia over 3 years with his dog Tigan. Phenomenal journey, phenomenal guy, amazing storyteller, and he's just cool. He's just really cool. That is going to be a fantastic chat.
And his passion and connection to his dog and wilderness and animals is an amazing. He's just amazing.
He's really cool.
I feel like he gets the wildness that some of us have forgotten. So I'm excited to have him on.
So that's going to be Wednesday, the 23rd September at 12 p.m. And until then, well, thanks so much for watching. It's been chaotic. It's been wild. It's been all over the place, but this has been so much fun.
And hopefully you can put in practice some of these things that everybody is talking about, or each of our guests say, we try to keep them down to a couple things that you can implement a week. So hopefully you can get out there, stay consistent, find find the thing that lights you up. And maybe if it's going back to the things as kids or the fun things, I always used to love to just swim in the ocean. So I've been forcing myself to jump in the freaking ocean every day.
We should be more like our kids. And we just had Matt Murphy. Thank you so much for the comment on screen right now. You need to send through your address because we need to send you a book from Paul Pritchard's.
Oh, yes. Yes, we need to.
You want a book from Paul.
Can he message us? Message Justin
Matt,
or follow the Jonesies?
Send me a message. Don't post your address on this because we don't want everyone else to see. All right. Anyway, until next week, catch you later and happy trails. Keep on adventuring.